Welcome to Dear Premed. I'm Mary Tate, and I'm a fourth-year medical student at Harvard. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the podcast introductory episode, I'm so thrilled to be your host, producer, and editor of Dear Premed and bring you monthly episodes where I get to answer your questions on all things pre-med, give you a medical minute on health in the news, and interview a physician or physician in training about their journey to medicine. One of the most common questions I get from pre-meds is about gap years. Should you take a gap year? Should you take more than one? What should you do with that time? And will it actually give you a better shot at getting into medical school? To answer those questions, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm just going to first give you a way to think about this question and whether or not it makes sense for you. I'll talk about my choice to take a gap year, give you some examples of what my friends have done in their gap years, and just give you a couple of facts that you can hold on to about this topic. So first, how do you think about this decision? How do you think about whether or not to take a gap year? I think about this in terms of what you plan to gain or learn from the gap year. Most commonly, students think about doing this as a way to strengthen their application. Now, this could mean that you want to spend some time focusing on your academics or the MCAT, or you want to have a little bit more exposure to the field of medicine, or you haven't had the chance to do some scholarly work, and so you want to spend some time doing that. I want to point you to some resources that you might want to look into. For academics, whether you're a student who didn't fulfill all the prereqs in college, or maybe you did take those courses, but you didn't perform as well as you would have wanted to. One of the resources that I think will be useful to anyone in that category who's looking for a program to do during their postgraduate years is the AAMC's website on post-bac programs. There you can sort by whether or not you're a first-time taker of the pre-med classes or if you're repeating classes. It helps you really curate a list of programs that actually meets your needs. So if MCAT is the thing that you're focusing on, people often are thinking about, do I take a course or do I do kind of self-study? And for some people, myself included, taking a course seemed pretty cost prohibitive to me. But I wanted to point out to you all that there are fee assistance programs out there for folks who may have difficulties paying for an expensive Kaplan course. You can actually reach out to them. And if your family makes under a certain amount of money after providing some evidence around that, then there are ways to get the cost drastically reduced. Also, for everyone, as it comes time to apply, the AAMC also has a fee assistance program in which they can reduce the registration fee from $315 to $125 and give you access to the MSAR database, and your application fee gets waived for the first 16 programs that you apply to. So please check that out. Now, outside of kind of each of those bullet points of how you might strengthen your application, are there other valid reasons to do a gap year? And I say there are. Maybe you just want to live your best life during that year. Maybe you want to get a job and figure out what it's like to live outside of being a student. And that's totally okay. You can't go wrong with your choice as long as you're really excited about it. What's most important is that when it comes time to apply to medical school and to interview, that you can speak about your gap year experience and you can tell interviewers why you chose to pursue it and what you gained from the experience. People always ask me what I did for my gap year. After college, I spent a year working for a nonprofit organization called One Heart Worldwide, and they work on reducing maternal and neonatal mortality in the most remote and rural areas around the world. And when I came to the decision about doing the gap year, one of the things that I wanted to gain out of the experience was to think about the problems that I was most excited about in medicine and think about how people with other professional backgrounds approach those issues. I'm really passionate about reducing racial and ethnic inequities in birth outcomes here in the US. And so this opportunity really allowed me to see, okay, people who, have capital and start a nonprofit, or people who have a master's in public health or might have a PhD, like how do they think about this issue? Now, friends of mine took a gap year and they did all kinds of different things. Some of my friends did post-bac programs. Some worked as research assistants. I had friends who worked in consulting to help pay back some of their debt before they accrued more debt in medical school. I even had a friend who worked as a nanny. So really anything is okay as long as you see the benefit and you're excited about the work and you can share what you learned with someone else. Now, a couple of facts before I end this topic. In my entering class of medical school, we had quite the range of experience. A third of students in my class came directly from college. A third of students had taken one gap year like I did, and a third of students had taken more. So it's really okay, whatever you choose. And in the Fact or Fiction reviewing data from the official guide to medical school admissions from the AAMC, they actually share that more than half, 59.9% of people matriculating in 2015 had taken at least one gap year between their graduation from college and matriculation to medical school. So if you make this decision, you won't be alone. And the last piece of advice I want to leave you on this topic is please, please, please think about your loans if you're going to take a gap year. Get some information from the National Student Loan Data System to figure out what kind of loans you have out there, who's servicing your loans, and how you're going to deal with that during your gap year or years. All of these loans tend to have some kind of grace period in which you don't have to pay immediately after graduation, but somewhere between 6 months to a year after you graduate, you need to start paying those back. And depending on what you might do during that year, you might be able to get a deferment or have your loans put in forbearance, in which you won't be responsible for paying your loans during that time. So please, please, please look into that before you make this decision and figure out your plans to deal with your student loans. For the first medical minute of the show, I want to talk to you about Puerto Rico. On November 17th, about 2 months after the hurricane hit, the Kaiser Family Foundation issued a brief entitled Public Health in Puerto Rico After Hurricane Maria. In that brief, they helped to paint a picture of what the health status of Puerto Rico was like prior to the hurricane, including that Puerto Ricans on the island were about twice as likely to report only poor or fair general health as compared to the U.S. overall. And the percentage of people living with disability was about double the percentage of people in the U.S. overall. Status.pr is a website tracking recovery efforts in Puerto Rico. And as of December 24th, 100% of hospitals were open, 45 of 48 dialysis centers were open, and Puerto Rico's electric power authority was generating at almost 70% capacity, so still many people without power. Finally, amid a lot of reporting both within Puerto Rico and external to Puerto Rico, it was found that there was an excess of about 1,000 deaths in the time since the hurricane made landfall when you compare to years prior, which was not exactly matching up with what Puerto Rico was reporting officially. As a result, Puerto Rico's governor has ordered a review of the death count after Hurricane Maria. So there's still so much to follow and still so much need in Puerto Rico. And so if you go to my website, you can find some links to find out more information about what I share with you today, and also a place where I donated to the hurricane relief efforts.
They think they know me, but I'm not who I once was.
My first guest on Dear Premed is Jennifer Beal. Her family is from the Dominican Republic, and she hails from New York City. There she went to Stuyvesant High School. She was a 2007 Questbridge National College Match recipient and attended Stanford, where she majored in human biology. After college, she was a research assistant at the Hospital for Special Surgery. Then came to Boston with all of her Yankee pride to attend Harvard Medical School. As if medical school wasn't enough, she took a year between third and fourth year of medical school to get a master's in public health at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health in the field of quantitative methods. Now she's a fourth year medical student applying into orthopedic surgery. Along the way, she's published 5 papers in 3 different journals, presented at a number of conferences, and volunteered for some incredible organizations. I am so proud of her, and I'm incredibly lucky to call her my friend. Today, we hear about her path to medicine. Jen, thank you so much for being my first guest.
Hi, Mary. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, the first question that I have for you is, can you tell us a little bit about when you first considered medicine as a potential future career path?
Yeah, so I've actually known that I wanted to be a doctor since I was little. I used to accompany my mom to all her medical appointments when I was younger. She can't speak English, so I would go and interpret all her sessions for her, which was always a lot of fun for me. I'd go there and I'd, have conversations with the doctors. They would entertain my precocious self, and they'd answer my questions so that I could properly answer everything for my mom. And I remember just being amazed by how they were able to figure out what was going on and able to help her out. And I sort of saw them as these heroes and in these white coats, and I just really wanted to be one of them.
How old were you when you were translating for your mom and your family in the doctor's appointments?
I mean, I think it started as soon as I was in elementary school. My mom would sort of drag me along to most things and have me help her.
How did that joy of medicine or interest in medicine grow?
I ended up going to STI, which is a math and science school. So I think there was a large cohort of people who were wanting to be doctors as well. So I sort of fell along that pre-med track. And never really faltered from it. Went into college, majored in human biology, just all the usual pre-med checklists. I sort of stuck along that path.
Yeah. Talking about Stuyvesant High School, I read from a report that came out that in 2013, Stuyvesant High School was only about 1% Black and like 2.3% Hispanic. And then looking at the population of people in New York, that's pretty surprising. And so I understand there's a specialized admissions exam that you have to take to get into these high schools. So how did that whole process work for you? What kind of things did you do in order to get this really amazing opportunity to go there? So
I actually was very lucky in that I happened to have a close-knit group of friends when I was in junior high who informed me of the test. I wasn't aware of what Stuyvesant High School was or what magnet schools were. My parents obviously had no idea. But luckily, my close friends in middle school were aware of this, so they sort of put me in the loop. And luckily, actually, one of the things I benefited from was one of the summers, I think the summer of 7th grade, we actually had this program come to our junior high, and basically it was essentially like a free Kaplan course to help us prep for the test. The test itself, it's essentially, similar to the SAT, just this large standardized test. Then now there's a huge infrastructure built around it where people can pay thousands of dollars for Kaplan and Princeton Review courses to study for it. So it becomes very hard to get into the schools because there's all this money that's being spent to get kids prepared for it. So as a student who didn't have those resources, I was very lucky to have that program come to our school. I think if I hadn't taken that test, or taken that course, I don't know if I would have done sufficiently well on the exam to get to the high school.
So then you're at Stuyvesant High School, at this school that's a magnet school, doing a lot of science and math. Were there a lot of people like you who were interested in going into medicine, or kind of what was the environment like, and how did you feel supported while you were there? Yeah,
it's a very interesting place. It's imagine taking a school, it was just like 3,000 people or so was in the school. Every class was around 900 plus or so. And there's a lot of people who all wanted to go to the same colleges. So I often say that high school was more competitive than college for me.
Wow.
I think I worked harder in high school than I did in college just by being around that sort of atmosphere. Yeah. I mean, it was great. The resources that were available to me, we had so many AP courses. I took Japanese for 4 years.
In high school?
In high school, and got very good at it, and was, fortunate enough to even go travel to Japan because I had the support of the teachers there. So there were amazing resources, and I thank STI for that. But it was a tough place.
Yeah,
it was absolutely a tough place.
So then you make your way to Stanford.
I do.
And you studied human biology. Did you know going in that was going to be your major?
Yeah, so I went out to California to get some sun for a little bit.
Yes.
Oh, so nice. I think that when I got there, they're the typical pre-med majors, right? There we often think about there's biology and human biology. Human biology is a bit fuzzier, is the word we use at Stanford. It just means a little bit more about thinking just besides what's at the microscope, but more thinking about the social aspects of health as well. So I think that's what drew me to that specific major, and it actually ends up being one of the more popular pre-med courses, pre-med majors there as well. So,
and you did a lot of really amazing stuff while you were at Stanford that I was reading about. One that interests me is being a part of the rugby team. Tell me about what that experience was like, and just having that community.
Oh man, Stanford women's rugby. Great people that has actually created an amazing community. All the people that I played with there are now doing such amazing things. One of them is an astronaut now. So
it's crazy.
Casual. Countless doctors and lawyers, and just an incredible group of women. And we're all very supportive of each other. You think about it, you're going on that field and you basically are letting go of essentially your body while you're there. You're just trusting your teammates to take care of you if you end up in the bottom of a ruck. There could be a bunch of women on top of you, and you just need your teammates to physically lift them off of you. and physically get you back to your feet. You're dependent on everyone on that field. You sort of try to move in unison and take care of each other. So I think that starts on the field just by the nature of the game and extends outside of the field, where you just feel that no matter where I am, we always have each other's back.
One of the questions I get a lot from particularly first-year students who are pre-med in college is kind of how they spend their time and what activities should they be involved in. What brought you to rugby, and what kind of made you decide on the different activities that you were involved in at Stanford?
Yeah, I think that originally, I entered as a freshman, sort of thinking that I wanted to do things that were good for medical school applications, but I also wanted to have fun. So the rugby team was more so I just really wanted to enjoy myself and had fun. I played sports in high school, and I wanted to continue that, and I loved being part of a team. But it was a large time commitment, and I do know that during my 4 years, there was a lot of tension for me as to whether or not to commit full-time to the team versus thinking about, maybe I should be spending this time doing more research or doing more of the typical pre-med situations people do. So I waffled back and forth a lot of the time, and sometimes I took some time off to work on my honors thesis and things like that. So thankfully the team understood that and was fine with me doing that, though it's hard to figure out how to spend your time. Whereas you want to make sure you have all the check boxes set for when you apply, you also want to make sure that you're still a college kid. You still want to have fun, you still want to make friends. And I think that a lot of those experiences translate to medicine, right? Nothing taught me more about teamwork than being on an actual team. So when I'm in the OR, I know what it's like to know, okay, who's in charge here? Who do I rely upon? How do I communicate with others? Because I had to do that in the field when someone was running towards me to try to tackle me. So if I can communicate with someone breathing down my neck, then I think communicating in the OR is a little bit, less stressful. So it teaches you a million things. So I think that regardless of how you tend to spend your time in college, there are lessons to be learned, even outside of medicine.
I know that you did your thesis at Stanford on return to play decision variability. Tell me a little bit about how you first got involved in this research. How did you find the mentors? Where did this all start?
So for me, I ended up taking a course my sophomore year on sports medicine. And the professor who taught it was Dr. Gordon Matheson. And I approached him after class and, I said, I'm interested in this work. How could I get more involved? And he said, well, actually, I'm in charge of a lab here on campus, come by. So I was actually able to get plugged into that lab and ended up working for that lab for the rest of my time while at Stanford. And my honors thesis came from that lab. So I think it was, going up to the professor and asking them a question and continuing to follow up with them afterwards to make sure that, they knew that I was interested and making sure I knew everything they wanted from me and giving them that and more so that they would continue to be invested in me.
And what did that follow-up look like? Was that reaching out to them by email every so often or kind of what was the communication process like before you actually started doing research in the lab?
It was a lot of in-person meetings and emails as well. Luckily, it was on campus, so it wasn't too far to go there. I think for me, meeting in person is always important. So I think the more face time you put in, the more people are invested in your future, and the more they can, put a face to a name. So I always just try to get to their office as much as I can.
Reflecting back on your journey to medicine, were there times when people told you no? And what was the situation? What happened? How did you deal with it?
So for a while, I didn't have a job after I graduated from Stanford. So I remember as a senior in school, I had decided I was going to take a couple of years off to just be an adult in the world outside of medicine. And also I still actually needed to take my MCAT, which is so fun. So I, with the other pre-meds were in similar situations, we're looking for the typical research assistant jobs. It was slim pickings, so we're all sort of competing for the same amount of jobs. And I interviewed for some, which thinking back now were just absolutely not good fits, and I didn't get them. And I was just so disappointed. I remember I was about to graduate. I had no job, was about to move back in with my parents. Here I am, and I'm like, this is a really good Stanford success story. I'm about to move in with the folks again with no money. This is great. And I actually, happened upon this job. It was a research assistant position at an orthopedic department at this large New York hospital. And I thought, this is perfect. This is the job I want. And I interviewed, and I didn't get it. I was heartbroken. because I thought that was the job. And I didn't know what I was going to do if I didn't have a job. What did I have this education for if I couldn't continue on this path? Luckily, the research assistant whose job was up for grabs, he actually reached out to me after the fact, after I didn't get the interview. And he said, "Hey, I really liked your interview. You're one of my favorites. And I just wanted to reach out and let you know about these other job offerings that I've seen around." He didn't have to do that. He just reached out on his own accord. So I followed up on some of his leads and actually landed the job that I wanted, that I ended up taking for 2 years, and was actually absolutely perfect. That happenstance, I ended up in the right place. But for a while, it was rough. It was a big shock to the self-esteem.
So when you had difficulties like this one, you just graduated, didn't have a job, trying to figure out what the next steps were, who were your mentors?
So I think at that point I had, Dr. Matheson back at school, my honors thesis advisor, and we had actually a pretty good pre-med advisory committee there as well. So I could always reach back to them to get more job opportunities. I would say, though, that looking back, I don't think that I properly utilized the people who were around me. I think at that point, I've sort of grown into now sort of tapping into the resources that are available to me. I think at that point, I was very sheepish, and I just thought that I should figure things out on my own. And I didn't ask enough questions or ask people for advice enough. And I wish I would have done that differently. I think had I done that, maybe I wouldn't have been struggling as much on my own.
Who are people that you lean on as mentors now in medical school?
Yeah, so for me, I think most of my mentors end up being people I do research with. I think that those people, for me, I spend so much time with them, and I invest so much work and so much time in just having them get to know me and making sure that I can prove to them that I can do this work and doing above and beyond what needs to be done, that those end up being the people who become sort of my biggest fans. I make them my fans. And they're very gracious with their time now. So for example, here at Harvard, the person I work the most with is Dr. Jeffrey Katz at the Orthopedic Research Institute here at the Brigham. And he's been phenomenal for the past 5 or so years, giving me more responsibility every time that I prove like, oh, I can do this. I want some more. And he's like, okay, you want more? Here you go. And continually upping the ante and making me sort of a more competent person throughout the year, so that now I feel, much more confident when I approach a research project and know that I can take it from its inception and carry it through.
Now, talking about some of the work that you've done in orthopedics here at Harvard, I would love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about the project Operation Walk that you're involved in.
Sure. So Operation Walk is an organization near and dear to my heart. So it's an organization based here out of the Brigham and Women's Hospital, where they go once a year to Dominican Republic, to a hospital in Santo Domingo, and they have this relationship where they go once a year and they perform free knee arthroplasty for patients there. They screen patients ahead of time to make sure they're both medically safe to do the operation on, and also that this program is intended for those who can't afford surgeries. So they screen them for financial limitations as well. So you go there for a week, and they bring a huge team with them. That's not just the surgeons, but it's physical therapists, it's nurses. It's this huge, essentially, circus that shows up to the Dominican Republic and just does these amazing operations on patients there. So I've had the opportunity to work with them for the past 4 years and travel with them during my first year of medical school, and then continue to do research projects with them throughout the years. And it's a program that always gives back more than you put in, and it's been sort of just amazing to go back to the DR and treat the patients that I've always wanted to treat.
I wish you guys could see how her face just lit up as she was talking about this. Tell me about the first time that you went back to the DR with Operation Walk.
Oh, it was amazing. So, we go there, and this whole time I'm like looking forward to it. I'm like, what's it going to be like to go back in this capacity? I've been back to Dominican Republic a million times with my family, but never in a medical capacity. So it was just, I go there. There were so many firsts for me while I was there. And I think that program also, and that experience really solidified my interest in going into orthopedics. I remember there were 2 big experiences I remember. One was being in the OR for the first time, and being allowed to scrub in for the first time. It's the first time scrubbing into a case, and it's a knee replacement. And I swear my entire body was on fire. I just could not contain my excitement. I've never felt that way. It was just the sparks were radiating off of my skin. And I, feeling that, I was like, if I can do this for the rest of my life and feel this way, like, sign me up.
Yes.
And then seeing the patients, the patients come in on the first day. It's a lot of the follow-up patients. So the patients that got operated upon the year prior, 2 years prior, and we do their follow-up, because I think that's one of the most important things about Operation Walk, is to make sure not only are you operating on these patients, but you want to make sure you did a good job. You want to make sure, how are they doing now? Do they have the resources that they needed? And can we do a better job? So to see those patients come in, and they're so excited. They're so excited to see the doctors that gave them this operation. They come literally dancing in. They're just dancing in the halls because they're so excited about their new mobility that these surgeons were able to provide. And to see their excitement and their appreciation, that's a population I'd love to continue to work with.
Operation Walk really helped solidify your interest in doing orthopedics.
Absolutely.
But take us back. When did you first realize that orthopedics might be the specialty for you?
So I have sort of a winding road of orthopedics. I think initially for me, I think I always knew that I wanted to be a surgeon. Growing up, my parents always worked with their hands. And to me, I'd always identified working with your hands as providing for your family. So even when I knew I wanted to be a doctor, I knew that it was something that had to consist of me working predominantly with my hands. So I always knew I wanted to be a surgeon. I started with orthopedics mostly because I was initially interested in that sports medicine work that I was doing at Stanford, and got exposed to a lot of orthopedic surgeons there, and continued that interest through biomechanics research, both at Stanford and at Hospital for Special Surgery. So I think I was sort of interested from a fairly academic standpoint, was interested in kinematics and bones and all that. I was like, this is great. But it wasn't until Operation Walk, though, that it really solidified it for me, seeing both the operations and the patients, and realizing the need that there is for restoration of mobility, both in international context and domestic context. I think there's a lot of opportunity in orthopedics to do a lot of good that hasn't been tapped yet. And I think that's what excites me about it, because I know that there are things that I could accomplish from the field.
Tell me what it means for your family for you to be here at Harvard Medical School.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about Harvard, one of the benefits of being here, is that it truly is recognized internationally. So even my grandma, who never leaves her farm in the DR, like literally never leaves, knew the word Harvard. She's like, oh, I know that place. I mean, with time, I've trained her to recognize the word Stanford. But she always already recognized Harvard. And I think they got so excited about it. And it was amazing for me just to see the outpour of support from both my family and random strangers in the DR. And I think they're incredibly proud. My mom will tell anyone that listens to her that she has a daughter that goes here. And it's great. I think they're very proud. And I think for me, I hope that it means that their sacrifices were worth it to come out here. And, I hope that, it was worth for my mom to leave the DR and leave all her family, even though she's very close to them, and come out here just to give us a better opportunity. So I hope that for her, this means it was worth it. But I think it also for them means that me being here is sort of identifying a person who becomes a resource for others. So my mom, for example, will text me randomly saying, like, you need to talk to this girl from New Jersey. Like, I'll just get a phone number saying, oh, there's this a girl in Pennsylvania who has a lot of potential. You should talk to her. She would benefit from some guidance. And I think for me that's one of the important parts about being here is, having this platform and knowing that there are people that I can help with that.
I totally identify with all that you're saying. My mom will tell anybody who will listen, my baby goes to Harvard.
Strangers in the street.
In the store, wherever you go.
It doesn't matter.
If you'll listen, she'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
What's next for you?
I'm excited to have the rest of this year to get my life together and figure out, what's next, and figure out where I'm going for the next 5 years.
How does it feel to be back in this application process, doing this all again?
A little bit of PTSD. It is interesting thinking back on myself as I guess I was 23 or so when I was applying versus now, and how am I going about it differently? I think that, with time I've learned how to be more efficient with my time and learned how to work a little bit differently. And I think that now it's a little less daunting. I remember just being so scared as a 20-something-year-old going through the process of getting into medical school and not knowing whether or not it was going to happen and having so many self-doubts. That I think at this point I'm a lot more confident going through it, which has made it a little bit still stressful, but less stressful.
It's been so great to chat with you today. Before I let you go, a question that I'm going to be asking all of the guests who come on Dear Premed, I was wondering if you can share with us a letter that you'd write to your pre-med self.
So if I had to say, I guess, Dear Jen to my younger self, and I'll keep this short because we know we both love brevity. So I would say a couple things. So be your biggest fan. There will be countless times when people will doubt you, or you will look around and realize that no one looks like you, and you will begin to doubt yourself and convince yourself that you don't belong. During these times, and frankly every day, you need to have complete faith in yourself. For others to trust you, you need to trust yourself. Fill yourself with the confidence that you do belong and that you will prove that to every person. Second thing, hard worker is the best compliment. There will always be people who are smarter, more talented, and definitely better connected than you are. Those are things you can't really control. You can make up for these things by making sure that you work harder than every single person in the room. Be efficient and purposeful with your work, but get it done. You will find that your schoolwork improves and your superiors begin to trust you with more important work. And once that happens, don't get complacent. Keep up the pace, be relentless with your work ethic, and you'll be surprised at what you can achieve. I think that's probably what I'd tell myself.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you, Mary.
You all, I am just so grateful to her for being on the show and being the first one to be on the show, this brave soul. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Mary, for trusting me with the first podcast.
Thanks for listening to Dear Premed. My theme music is by Michael O. It's called Invincible from his EP In the Beginning.